What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Daniel Starkand, and we're here to talk about the Dodgers. There are 21 games left in the season. The Dodgers are 2.5 games back. They lose this morning to the Cardinals. The Giants, of course, off. And so, Daniel, there's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of feelings. There's a lot going on. I'm going to start with a big question, which is big picture. 21 games to go, 2.5 games back in the division. Have you written off the division? Are you all in on the wild card and getting ready for that? Or do you still think the Dodgers have a realistic chance to catch the Giants?
Let me just start off by saying how frustrating, the last couple days have been. Obviously, every game is so important right now, and it feels like those were a couple games, especially today, the Dodgers could have won. So that was frustrating. With that being said, though, I'm not writing off the division, completely yet, just because things can change so quickly. We saw, just last week where the Dodgers win 3 straight and the Giants lose 3 straight, and they go from being 2.5, 3 games back, whatever it was, to in first place. So, these things could change quickly. But the bottom line right now is that the Dodgers are just not playing good baseball. And the way they're playing right now, they ain't winning no division. So something's going to have to change. We know the offense is what's really been struggling recently. So they're going to have to pick it up because even if the Giants drop a few games here and there, I think overall, they're going to be solid to finish out the year. So that means if we're going to catch them, we're going to have to be, elite. We're going to have to rattle off 10 straight wins or something here. So it can be done, but something's going to have to change because the way they've been playing the last few days has not been good at all.
Yeah, and I'll get right into what I think is one of the biggest talking points and what a lot of people were talking about on Twitter. Thankfully, finally, something I've been harping on for a couple of weeks, which is the lineup that the Dodgers are putting out there. This is a team that enters the day 2 games back of the Giants. The Giants just came off of a sweep of the Rockies. The Dodgers fall last night. They come into today's game, and they put out a lineup that features Mookie Betts, Max Muncy, Trey Turner, and Justin Turner first 4. You feel good about those things. Then we get Cody Bellinger, Steven Souza Jr., Billy McKinney. How's that for an offensive outfield? We get Austin Barnes, and then the pitcher spot. And then the pitcher spot. And so from the very get-go, you're looking at that group and saying, what can we realistically expect? Cody Bellinger, 158 on the season. Souza, 161 on the season. McKinney, 192 on the season. And Austin Barnes, 217 on the season, followed by a pitcher spot. So you have 5 guys that are hitting 217 or below, and Austin Barnes is the best hitter in that group. What do you make of that? Obviously, it's not good, but, I'm looking at this. This was Will Smith's 3rd day off in 9 days. That includes days in which the Dodgers didn't play. So I believe 1 off day plus 2 games in which he didn't play. Then you've got Corey Seager, who seems to be getting rest once a week, although he did come in as a pinch hitter. You get Chris Taylor, who admittedly isn't a whole lot better, but is getting rest 1 day a week. To me, this is the part that frustrates me because I understand resting guys. I understand trying to keep them healthy. But what are we resting them for? Like, we lose this game by 1 run. You're telling me that a Corey Seager at bat with the bases loaded instead of Cody Bellinger, or a Chris Taylor at bat with the bases loaded instead of Cody Bellinger, Will Smith, like one of those guys, this is the thing. Give me Seager or Smith. Just give me one of them. Why are we sitting all these guys at the same time? I know it's a day game, blah, blah, blah. This is what bothers me more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned Will Smith first there, because that's like probably the most obvious one that it's like, what are we doing here? Will Smith has been carrying this team offensively in the second half. He's been one of the best hitters in the league. Like you mentioned, he's had a few other off days, so it's not like he's been playing every day and this was just the first one. Like he sat out 2 of the 4 games in this series. So that's a little excessive to me. For a while there, it finally got to the playing time dispersion that we're comfortable with. Is Will Smith playing most of the time, but now it's kind of, I don't know, maybe Will's dealing with some fatigue after a long season. I don't know what it is, but to me, he should have been in there today, especially when you got other guys out of the lineup. Like, it's one thing to rest Will Smith when he's the only guy that's resting and you still got a lineup that's 6 deep or whatever. But right now, they went out there with a lineup that was 4 deep today. And the thing is, when we saw it, when we saw the 5 through 8 in that lineup, we knew what was going to happen. It wasn't like, oh, they just had an off day or whatever. Like what happened was what everyone predicted would happen. So you can't go into a big league ball game with basically 5 easy outs in a row in your lineup. And I know the pitcher spot you can't not have the pitcher spot. But you also had a guy who's batting 160, batting fifth, and like you said, he came up in a big spot with the bases loaded. He came up again to lead off the ninth inning and just doesn't switch up his approach at all. I think I think everyone who watches the Dodgers has reached an all-time high when it comes to frustration with Cody Bellinger. It's been a rough year, but nothing rougher than the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's unfortunate. We've been talking about for a couple weeks now how this is crunch time. They need to go out there, and win every game basically, because that's how well the Giants are playing. They don't really have any other choice right now, and just to see them trot out half a lineup and I get that it's getaway day, I get that it's a day game, but that doesn't make this game any less important than any others.
Yeah, half a lineup is generous because they had 4 competent hitters, I believe, in a 9-man lineup there. Yeah, I mean, people, Nomo FOMO in the chat is saying, hey, Will Smith played the night game, Barnes in a day game made sense. On one hand, I want to desperately make the argument that there's 21 games left in the season and that Will Smith should be able to play 19 of the 21 games and like just ride the guy. Like, what are we saving him for is the question that I keep asking. On the flip side, I think the bigger point, the point that I would emphasize even more is, fine, you want to give Will Smith the day off today, then don't rest Corey Seager. Don't rest Chris Taylor. And again, Chris Taylor has been terrible of late, okay? He did hit a home run the other day, but it's like Chris Taylor is way better than Billy McKinney. Like the gap between those two. I was having a debate with my brother who was trying to point out like, oh, Max Muncy's been terrible. Mookie Betts has been terrible. I'm like, yes, but we can differentiate between really bad and atrocious because Max Muncy hitting 190 is really bad. Cody Bellinger being 0 for 22 is in an entire other category of bad. It's not like once you get below 200, it's all equal. These guys have been a new level of bad of late, and it has been consistent. No matter what split you want to look at, McKinney and Bellinger are at the very bottom of those lists. And so, sure, you want to Wes Smith today, fine. Then Corey Seager needs to be in the lineup. Corey Seager plays shortstop. Corey Seager was on the injured list for an extended period of time with a random injury, non-muscle injury. So, like, he's a guy that should be playing every single freaking day. Like, Trey Turner plays every day. He's the only guy who plays every day for the Dodgers. Justin Turner plays a lot. Chris Taylor was playing a lot, but I don't get why all of these guys need rest and why all of them need rest simultaneously. Not to mention you do it in basically what amounts to a bullpen game. I'm not saying there's a better day to do it, but in a game in which your pitching is not necessarily going to be at full strength, although 2 earned runs, like shout out to the bullpen for once again holding it down. But to your point, This is exactly what we expected. Cody Bellinger, 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts. Steven Souza, 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts. Corey Seager is a pinch hitter, 0 for 1. Billy McKinney, 0 for 2. Chris Taylor, pinch hitter, 0 for 2. Austin Barnes, 0 for 3. Pitcher spot, Gonsolin, 0 for 1. Knable, 0 for 1. Albert Pujols with a walk. So that group combines to go 4, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15, 0 for 17 with a walk. I went through and just to make sure, I said, oh, well, maybe there was some bad luck. I went through and looked at the expected batting average on every ball in play that those guys put into play, okay? 340 was the biggest one. Steven Souza hit a long fly ball, 350 feet. That had a 340 expected batting average. Then we got 150, 130, 120. This is going top to bottom, by the way. So we get to 120, it's only going to be below that. 060, 060, 030, 030, 020, 000. I don't know how you have a 0 expected batting average. I'm guessing that's the infield fly. But those are the balls put in play. There were 5 strikeouts in addition to those. So I mean, we're not even talking about competitive at-bats. We're not talking about bad luck. This was pitiful. Cody Bellinger, 0 for his last 22 now, I believe. That number might be higher. It might be 23 or 24. You look at it's like you said, we looked at the lineup. We knew exactly what was going to happen 5 through 9. That's what we got. The top of the lineup was fine. As much as we want to say those guys have been bad of late, Mookie Betts, 1 for 3 with the walk. Max Muncy, 1 for 4. The one was a double. Trey Turner, 2 for 4. With an RBI himself, and then Justin Turner 0 for 3. But I mean, you get 4 hits from the first 4 guys in the lineup, and your pitching only gives up 2 runs. I don't know what more there is to say about this. It's just irritating because we said it. This is what it feels like when you're managing as if you have an 8-game lead in the division instead of a 2.5-game deficit.
Yeah, and the thing also is like they're not even putting out like their best bench lineup. Like like Albert Pujols hasn't been great by any means, but like he had a homer earlier in the series. He drew a walk today. Like if you're gonna rest guys, like why not get him into the lineup? Like they could have easily done it. Mookie Betts was playing
Yeah.
second base. Put him in right field, Muncy at second. Then you at least you're taking out McKinney or Souza, who's an automatic out up there. So like if you're gonna rest, your regulars, at least put in like some of your best bench guys because McKinney, I can't remember the last time he got a hit. Souza, I know he just got called up, but it's not like he's really proven anything he hasn't proven to be worthy of starts in September baseball games in a pennant race when you're 2 games out of first place. So yeah, I mean, what can we say? When we see that lineup, you expect what we got, and it was only one run. And the thing is, they were a hit away or a couple hits away from, sneaking out of there with a win. And then you're at least feeling a lot better about yourself. I know, they easily could have won the game before too, but if you're coming out of that series 3 out of 4, even though the bats aren't really firing on all cylinders, you're at least feeling good about yourself coming back, only 2 back in the loss column instead of 3, because with each day that goes by, if you're losing ground in the standings, at a certain point, you're going to get to a point where you can't really make it up anymore.
Yeah, McKinney 0 for his last 14 with 7 strikeouts. The last base hit that Billy McKinney got was August 25th against the Padres.
Wow.
That was the 16 inning game. So that was the biggest hit of Billy McKinney's Dodger career. That was also his last hit. As some people have pointed out, I mean, it's just lots of 0-fers. 0 for 1, 0 for 1. Oh, and that was that was before today's game. So 0 for 14 plus what did he do today? 0 for 2. So 0 for his last 16 with 7 strikeouts for Billy McKinney. And I mean, I'll bring you into a conversation that you and I have had briefly. If you missed it, Justin Lorber, future Dodgers, and I had a 20-minute conversation 2 days ago. You can check it out on our YouTube. And no mofomo, I see you asking, why is McKinney still here? Jason is mentioning Souza did get an RBI in his first game up. That's true. He did have an RBI double last night. But the question is, what's the best alternative to Cody Bellinger? And we listed out all the different guys. There's a couple guys in the minor leagues who are on the 60-day IL. We understand that's because of COVID, so they're not actually out for the season. I believe it was Luke Raley is the guy in that situation. But what do you make of the list of guys? Again, you and I have talked about, man, we wish we had Yoshi, who's absolutely raking. We're not big DJ Peters guys who has a 235 on base percentage or something like that, which just for the record is 50 points lower than Billy McKinney's on base percentage with the Dodgers. For context, obviously 10 home runs for Peters and 1 for McKinney. But where do you stand on Cody Bellinger, his value defensively, and how you weigh that versus some of the other guys that you could plug in there offensively? And folks that are in there too, there you go. THP pointing out Luke Raley is actually back. He played today. So folks in the chat, I'd love to hear from you. But where are you at with Bellinger versus the alternatives?
I mean, to me, it was a difference before versus now because before it wasn't quite as late in the season. You still had more time. You still have more patience. Like, oh, he'll get out of this slump. And honestly, the production wasn't good by any means, but it wasn't as bad as it is right now over the last few weeks, where he's basically a free out every time and can't even be a productive out up there. He's either popping up or striking out or whatever. I think now you don't really have another choice at this point. Like I know everyone likes to say, oh, he's a great defender, blah, blah, blah. But even if he is a great defender, you can't just be a free out at the plate. You have to at least be some sort of threat up there. And that's just not the case right now. The defense is good. You could even call it great, but it's not irreplaceable. Like it's not like he's saving games with his defense out there. That's hardly the case. So I think you gotta, look at other options. This offense is really scuffling. It's obviously not just Bellinger, but when a full offense is scuffling the way it is, you got to look at every avenue and try to get production out of whatever you can. Obviously the name that everyone's talking about is Matt Beatty, who no one would expect him to light the world on fire if he gets caught up, but he at least gives you a competent at bat up there. He's capable of getting those, productive outs that we haven't seen from Cody. He might even bloop in a base hit every now and then. He's not a center fielder, but I think he should be getting, the playing time that Billy McKinney's getting at the very least. So I think that's one option. Gavin Lux, we could call him up, I guess, but he's also not a center fielder. He's more of a second baseman. I think he's been playing a little outfield, but I don't know if you feel super comfortable with him. So I think the bottom line here is the options are not
Yeah.
great, but you kind of have to try anything at this point. I had hope that Cody was going to come out of it at some point. I didn't think it was possible for him to be this bad for this long, just because we know how talented of a player he is, how talented he's been in the past. Obviously, the accolades speak for themselves, but the bottom line is he's just lost right now. Maybe at a certain point it's mental just as much, if not more, than it is physical. So I think you got to start looking at other options. You can't just throw him in the lineup, especially batting fifth. That's something that shouldn't be happening right now. If he's going to play, he still should be playing sometimes, but throw him in that 8 hole
Yeah.
because I don't need him. We know the guys at the top of the order, if anyone, are going to be the ones getting on base, and I don't need no more bases loaded 2-out situations and Cody Bellinger
Yeah.
walking to the plate in the 5
I
hole.
want everybody to brace themselves for this, okay? Everybody just hold on to your chairs while I say this. Austin Barnes should have been the number 5 hitter in the Dodgers lineup today. It hurts me like deep down in my soul
That's
to
sad.
say that.
That's
But
sad.
right, like I mean, am I wrong on this one? I mean, I might trust Souza more, and then maybe that's just because I haven't watched Souza strike out for 4 weeks straight, and I have the double
Yeah.
from yesterday. But maybe Souza 5 and Barnes 6. I mean,
Tony Gonsolin was
totally.
a hitter in college, so maybe you should have threw him up in the 5 hole.
Totally. There are some people online asking about Trey Turner moving to center field. They've kind of hinted that that's not going to happen. Trey Turner is going to be an
Right.
infielder. So that kind of quashes the Gavin Lux thing. Again, the Cody Bellinger numbers, we won't go through this, but basically the last 4 weeks, his batting average now under 100. His on-base percentage, I believe, under 100. His walk percentage is around 1%. Strikeout percentage around 25 to 26%. A negative weighted runs created for Cody Bellinger over the last 4 weeks. I said it on the show with Justin. I don't want to regurgitate my own opinions here, but look, Daniel, and you can vouch. I'm not the Matt Beatty guy. I think I said basically all offseason that I don't think this guy should be on the roster. He's like a very average at best major league player, yada, yada, yada. Look, I would die for Cody. I'd like that we would kill for Matt Beatty at this point. Matt Beatty this season, 215 plate appearances. That's a big sample size. 262 batting average, 358 on base percentage, 374 slugging percentage. The slugging percentage, not great, but we're talking about a guy who hits 260. That's 150 points higher than Cody Bellinger. A 360 on base percentage is like good. That's not even like, okay, fine, I'll take it. Like 260 and 360 are like good numbers. He has a weighted runs created of 108. That means he's 8% better offensively than the league average player in Major League Baseball. He's walking 9% of the time, striking out just 18% of the time. He's down at AAA, hitting over 400 with an on-base percentage of almost 500. Somebody said today, why is Beatty not up? He spent more than 10 days in AAA, so we're well past they can't bring him up yet. It's like mind-boggling to me. Look, like you could try, and Justin hinted on our show that there's some people in the organization that seem to think that a guy like McKinney is someone the Dodgers believe in long-term. They like the tools. They think there's something that they can work with. And so they're afraid to DFA him and lose him out of the organization. Look, I could understand that for a time, but at this point, also if Zach McKinstry, like he's on the roster, he never plays. So like McKinstry could get sent down if we think he's that bad. The Matt Beatty piece, I understand Souza. They like the side of the plate that he's hitting from. Sure. I don't get it with Beatty. Luke Raley's the other guy. If you look at his last 30 days in AAA, he's got an OPS over 1,000 in his last 44 at-bats. Again, not a great major league debut, but 246 on base percentage, more than double Cody Bellinger's on base percentage for the last month. So we're not asking for a whole lot here. Even Gavin Lux, 302 on base percentage. Great. That looks amazing compared to what we're seeing. They've got lots of options down there. I'm not saying any of them are good, but I'm just saying compared to what we're dealing with with Bellinger, with McKinney. I mean, oh my gosh, I don't get it at all. So, I mean, can you think of a single reason why Matt Beatty isn't up there? I know the defense isn't great, but like, as I said to Justin, the gap between, it comes down to me. Would you rather have plus defense, Cody Bellinger, minus offense, or average offense and average defense? Because I think those are your two choices, and I don't see how you could pick the negative. Minus might be underselling it. How many minuses do we need to put there? 4 minus marks right now for Cody Bellinger? It's unbelievable.
As many as possible. I mean, he can't do worse than he's been.
I mean, can you think of a single reason? I mean, defense has to be the only one, but I can't figure out why he's not on the roster. I mean, the gap between what he has done in 215 plate appearances this year, which line up with his performance over the last few years. Again, I've complained because he's league average. I am dying for league average at this point. He has done it at the major league level. He's doing it at the AAA level. He's done it over multiple seasons. I for the life of me, I don't have a single explanation that makes sense of why he's not even on the roster.
Yeah, yeah. To me, the Billy McKinney thing is really confusing, just because I guess I don't see what they're
Yeah.
seeing in him, and there. Let's be clear, like there were some other teams that felt the same way. Like Billy McKinney bounced around for a little bit before ending up on the Dodgers. It's not like he was some top prospect. I mean, he was a top prospect back in the day, but then that shine kind of wore off. He's bounced around. It's not like the Dodgers gave up anything for him. They just kind of picked him up off waivers. So I'm not really sure, like at this point, why he's so worthy of a roster spot and just a spot in the organization, like long term. Like you were saying, apparently they see something in him, because I get that he doesn't have options, so you can't just straight send him down. So you would risk losing him if you take him off the active roster. But like what is the one thing that he does at an exceptional level that you're like, yeah, we can't lose that guy? Like he's just kind of okay at everything, if that even, like he doesn't have power. I guess the one thing he's good at is his defense, but it's not like he's made any game-changing plays out there. Like his defense has been fine. It hasn't been extraordinary by any means. So I don't get it.
The walk rate, I mean, if we're one other plus for McKinney, 15% walk rate. But again, I mean,
that's if you're only doing that and not hitting them,
154.
There's still not a whole lot of value.
Yeah, totally.
But for me, like Billy McKinney's main role, honestly, hasn't even been starting that much, and it's as a pinch hitter, honestly. And if you're gonna do that, might as well bring up the better hitter in Beatty, who yes, we'll be the first ones to say he's not as good of a defender, but when the role is just an at bat and maybe an inning or two on defense, like I think you'd prefer the better hitter in that spot. So yeah, I think I'm hoping we'll see Matt Beatty soon. We should have seen him already. They've made plenty of other moves like they brought up Souza the other day. It's not like, our roster's all full right now, we're not making moves. Like they've been making moves almost every day. So I don't think that solves all their issues, but it helps. And when you're not playing well, like as a whole, when your stars aren't performing to the level that they're capable of, like those moves on the margin like start to matter even more. Like if all those guys are raking, then we're not sitting here having a conversation about the last bench spot, and we're not sitting here getting a little angry about why Matt Beatty's not on the roster. Like just think about kind of how ridiculous that is, but it just shows where they are right now. And those marginal moves matter. They lost 2-1 today. You do one or two things differently, that's a win.
Yeah, Moose 1032 on YouTube is an interesting, sort of seeing parallels between the way Dave handles the Cody Bellinger situation and the way he's handled the Kenley Jansen situation. There's a level of loyalty maybe with Roberts that extends to this. And I'll be the first to admit I've been quick to criticize the way he's handled Kenley Jansen, and clearly that has worked out well for the Dodgers. He kept riding him in his rough patch, and then Jansen has turned it around and been fantastic since that. So I suppose there's an element of that. I mean, the flip side is like, at some point it becomes obvious to everybody there. Like, I almost wonder, is there conversations where Justin Turner or somebody in the clubhouse, not that they're ever going to go to bat against their guy, but it's kind of like, hey, like this guy's not giving us the best chance to win. Obviously they're going to support their player, but I just don't see it. I mean, it's a guy that, he's still under contract, or at least team control. Anybody on Twitter that thinks Cody Bellinger is not going to be a Dodger because the Dodgers are just going to non-tender him next year, I can, whatever amount of money you want to put down, Cody Bellinger will not be non-tendered. I know he's going to be due like minimum of $18 million or whatever, because your arbitration numbers can't go down. He's going to get paid that. Okay. I'm telling you right now, that's what's going to happen. But that's I don't get it. Like, I don't get why they feel the need to be loyal to Cody Bellinger. They've been loyal. Like, that's the thing. At what point does loyalty end? Do you just torpedo the entire season because you want the guy to feel good? You've already said publicly he's going to be platooned. You've already said he's going to play less. You've pinch hit for him in big situations late in games. So it feels like we've already crossed that bridge. Just rip the Band-Aid off and put this guy down. Do you see any parallels? Like, do you see that loyalty? And I'm not even saying this is a negative trait overall, just maybe in this situation. Do you think there's a correlation between the Jansen treatment and the Bellinger treatment?
I mean, I think it's tough because it kind of was heading in the direction of Bellinger starting to play less and less. But then, unfortunately, AJ Pollock gets hurt and you're losing, an outfielder, one probably your best, the guy who's been
Yeah.
playing really well. And now it's kind of like, what other options do you have? Like, yeah, in a perfect world, you could sit Cody Bellinger down because he's literally been the worst hitter in baseball. But the thing is, who are you putting in for him right
Yeah.
now? Like we just had the Billy McKinney conversation. I don't as bad as Cody has been, I don't really view that as any sort of upgrade. Like you mentioned the plate discipline. Maybe McKinney takes a walk here and there that Cody wouldn't take, but it's not like he's coming up with the big hit.
Yeah.
And then unless, if you want to call up Matt Beatty and say, he should be getting more playing time, fine. But until that happens, right now, to me, there isn't really any other options. You think like Cody could pick it up at least a little bit, like, hey, just hit 200, hit a home run every now and then, and we'll deal with it,
Yeah.
But he can't he can't even do that. So hopefully Pollock's back
Yeah.
soon because that's really the only hope at this point. I don't know what it's been. It's been like a week since he got hurt, so maybe he's one more week away. But until then, I think we're still gonna see Bellinger trotted out there. Maybe not every single day, but most
Yeah.
days.
Somebody's saying in here that Pollock has been working out at Dodger Stadium this week. I haven't seen any updates, so I can't confirm whether or not that's true. Have you heard anything about that, Daniel?
No, I just heard that it was like better than they thought it was going to be, and they're thinking like 2 weeks.
Great.
I mean, he has to miss 10 days, so it's not like he could be activated this weekend
Yeah.
or whatever. So it's going to be at least another week probably, and that's best case scenario.
Yeah, Tayo, I see your question in there. Hang on to that just a second because we're going to get to questions in a moment. There's one other interesting one that got asked up above. Apologies, I can't remember. I can see. I'll try and find who. Here we go. THP asked, do you think Cody Bellinger gets booed at the homestand? Like if he comes up in a big spot? I mean, we've seen Dodger fans boo Kenley Jansen. I have said previously, I'm not the guy that's going to advocate for booing at your own players. But this is more of a prediction than anything. I would not be surprised at all if Cody Bellinger gets booed in this homestand.
Yeah. I was about to say I hope it doesn't happen just because obviously he's going through stuff right now. He doesn't go to the plate every time just wanting to get out. Obviously he wants things to change. He's putting in the work to make things change, but it's got to be frustrating for him. He's got to be going through some mental difficulties right now, and your own fans booing you isn't going to help that. It's only going to make it worse. So I'd say the best thing for him wouldn't be booing, but like you said, I'm with you. I'm not going to be surprised if it happens. We've seen what Dodger fans do, when they're frustrated, and it's warranted.
They've booed for a lot less. They've booed for a lot less.
Yeah, exactly. Like they've booed for a lot less than what we've seen from Cody Bellinger this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get to some questions. I do want to talk remaining schedule. I've got the Giants schedule and the Dodgers schedule in front of me, but let's get to some questions. The question that Tayo had is there a team that the Dodgers don't want to face in the playoffs? Obviously, it appears the Padres and the Reds, I believe, are battling it out for that wild card spot. That appears to be let's say the most likely scenario for the Dodgers to be in the postseason at this point. Just checking the updated. San Diego has a 1-game lead over the Reds. Obviously, the Dodgers about to play the Padres a few times. They have 2 series against the Padres remaining. So Padres and Reds, we've had this conversation bits and pieces here and there. Do you have an opinion about which of those teams you'd like to see? We got some folks in the chat saying that Snell and Musgrove have just, that the Padres have pitchers that seem to own the Dodgers to some degree. Obviously, Tatis, Machado, et cetera. Padres or Reds, who are you less interested in seeing the Dodgers face in a 1-game wild card if we get there?
Yeah, to be honest, I'd say I'm most nervous about Yu Darvish. I know he hasn't been good recently, but he's still capable of going out there any particular start. He's got the best stuff of that bunch. So I'd probably lean towards the Reds, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. It's more just the Dodgers versus themselves, to be honest. Like if the Dodgers come out and perform how they're capable of, they could beat anyone. But at the same time, if they come out and they're not getting hits and it's just one bad at bat after another, they could lose to anyone, and we've seen that. So I'm more concerned about how the Dodgers are playing, and right now the Dodgers, to be honest, the way the Dodgers have played the last couple days, and for the most part over the last week or so, and if we're going back even further, like for the last month, the offense has been really bad. So if that's the case, they would lose to any of these
Yeah.
teams, you know. So I think the focus should be on what the Dodgers are doing and how they could get out of this slump and get back to being the powerhouse that they've been most of the year and that they should be.
Yeah, I had a guy on Twitter saying, "Well, who cares if they go to the wild card? If they're good enough to win the World Series, it won't matter." I'm like, I don't think you understand how baseball works come postseason. Like the Dodgers just
Yeah,
lost 2 games in a row to a 500 Cardinals team, not
right.
because the Cardinals are a better team than the Dodgers, but because stupid stuff happens in baseball and randomness is
For
part of the
sure.
deal. And so the 1 game thing is ridiculous. The 3 game thing last year was ridiculous. So absolutely, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, a couple people are pointing out the good news for the Dodgers is that there is a race, and I should add the Cardinals are just 3 games back of the Padres, and the Phillies are just 3.5. The Mets are just 5 games back. So there is a cluster of teams, and of course, if the Dodgers can win 5 out of 6 against the Padres, they drop back. You could have a mix there. And if all those teams are competing for that last spot, then who knows? You could have some of those teams in some sort of tiebreaker scenario as well. So you kind of just cross your fingers and hope that the pitching matchups don't line up nicely. As we've kind of hinted, the Padres have multiple guys that maybe you wouldn't love to see. Whereas a team like the Reds, if you could avoid Luis Castillo in that 1 game, you'd probably feel a little bit better about the alternatives. You wouldn't want to face the Cardinals and Adam Wainwright the way that he's been pitching, although the Dodgers did okay against him this last time they saw him. So, yeah, I mean, look, I agree completely with what you just said. The biggest concern right now is the Dodgers. And if these guys are all hitting 200 the 3 weeks leading into the postseason, then none of this is going to matter because,
Yeah.
like, we've seen how great the Dodger pitching has been. At some point, you need to be able to score some runs. And if Turner and, can't turn it around, if Chris Taylor can't turn it around, if Mookie Betts and Max Muncy can't turn it up, obviously Trey, Corey, and Will Smith are the 3 guys that have been carrying it, 2 of whom didn't
Yep.
play today. So there you go. We'll get to some other questions here. Irvin says, I can't wait for Daniel's broom to come out. I mean, hopefully, man. Irvin, we're with you. We're hoping the broom
It's
comes out
it's
soon.
been a little while. It's been a little while.
All right, let's see. Some people in the chat, the way our offense is playing, it doesn't matter who. That's from Nomo FOMO. People have theories about Cody Bellinger that it's his girlfriend getting pregnant. That's the reason for the concerns here. Yeah, I don't know. People are saying the Brewers pitchers are the scariest. I was interpreting that question as who would you not want to face in the wild card game? If you were talking who do you not want to face, period. Yeah, the Brewers are really, really good. They're just a couple games behind the Dodgers, so not too far removed there. And obviously the starting pitching they have, the bullpen stuff that they have, I would not want to touch any of that. Guillermo worried about Chris Taylor. Have you seen anything? Chris Taylor, when this slump that he's in the midst of, and again, his slump is on par with the Billy McKinneys of the world of late, unfortunately. He and Cody Bellinger occupying precious real estate on my fantasy baseball team bench as we speak. So I'm well aware of the struggles those 2 guys have had. I can't remember Taylor being in a slump like this. He feels like a guy that is just so consistent. Him and Justin Turner and really are the 2 that I would say it just doesn't feel like the lows are very low. And Justin Turner, I remember hearing maybe Joe Davis telling a story where he kind of figured out like the key to a season is I know I'm going to have good months is just making sure that the bad months aren't that bad. It feels like he's historically been able to do that, but over the last month, it feels like he's striking out 50% of the time. The batting average is way low in the hundreds. He's swinging through pitches. Have you noticed anything about Chris Taylor that seems to indicate why we're seeing issues? There's no injury history that we know of.
Yeah, I mean, there's no injuries we know of. It could just be fatigue, honestly. Like we're in game 140 out of 160 here. It's also important to remember that they only played 60 games last year, so that was a change, and it was a big concern of teams coming into this season is going back to 162. How players' bodies would react to that. And, for the most part, the Dodgers have had a lot of injuries, but Chris Taylor has been healthy all year. He's been the one guy who's been playing all year and in the lineup every single day. So maybe that's just catching up to him. But yeah, he's not a guy who really slumps too much, but I will say his swing is kind of prone to slumps just because he swings so hard and he's so focused on the launch angle. and he's had a lot of success because of that. He completely changed up his swing, and it changed his whole career. But I don't know, just how hard he swings. He's always been a high strikeout guy, so the strikeout numbers aren't really surprising. But yeah, I'd like to think it's just a fatigue thing. Hopefully, he could come out of it before the playoffs. And Justin Turner's another guy who hasn't been anywhere near his usual self recently. So yeah, that's not what we need right now. But those were the guys who were carrying the team for most of the year. So maybe it's just a fatigue type of deal.
One other thing I saw mentioned was some criticism of the Dodgers hitting coach. Do you buy into that type of thing at all? Is how much of this the hitting coach piece has always been fascinating to me, because it's we give the guy credit for all the things that he's done with the Dodger offense historically, which I then guess means he has to kind of own it when the hitters are slumping all together like they seem to be right now. Do you put any weight or any stock into that?
I mean, for me, it's kind of the opposite. I don't really, when the Dodgers are raking and putting up all these runs, I feel like the players are getting all their credit. I don't really see too many people talking about the hitting coach then. For me, the hitting coach only comes up when guys are doing bad. And yeah, it definitely could play a role in it. I don't know. I'm not in there in the cages with them every day. I don't know what he's telling them. I know, Robert Van Squarek, he's kind of a pioneer in the whole launch angle thing. The Dodgers have kind of embraced it more than any other team. And I'll say it's led to a lot of success over the years. The Dodgers are constantly one of the best offenses in the league. It's been a weird year. I feel like everything's either going right or everything's going wrong. When one guy slumps, everyone slumps, or everyone's hitting well with the Dodgers. So I don't know if there's a tangible reason for that or if it's just kind of luck or whatever. It's unfortunate. You never want to see all your best players get, go cold kind of when you need them the most. But I'm not going to sit here and call for a hitting coach's job when I don't really know what he does on a day-to-day basis, to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems crazy to me that we would blame Robert Von Scoyoc more for Mookie Betts' struggles than Mookie Betts, who's one of the best players in all of baseball. So we got one other question here, then we'll get to some schedule stuff. Josiah on Facebook asks, let's say the playoffs started today and everybody's healthy. What's your ideal Dodgers lineup, assuming everybody is back? Normally you would say are we talking a righty on the mound or a lefty on the mound? I genuinely don't think it matters. Because of the way this roster is constructed. I think if AJ Pollock is back, he's playing both sides. Mookie Betts is playing no matter what. Muncy's playing no matter what. Trey Turner's playing no matter what. Corey Seager's playing no matter what. Will Smith's playing no matter what. And Justin Turner's playing no matter what. So I guess the only real question is Chris Taylor or Cody Bellinger, who do you have in center field, is how I interpret it. And then we could talk through order here in a moment. But Chris Taylor, Cody Bellinger, Matt Beatty, who do you have out of those three?
I still think it's Chris Taylor. I mean, we saw him hit a homer the other day. He's not completely lost at the plate. He's definitely slumping. The numbers aren't great, but they're not Cody Bellinger level.
They're close.
Yeah, but it's also that's also Cody Bellinger's been doing this all year. At least Taylor's still if you look at the overall numbers, they're not bad by any means. So I'd say I'm the most confident that he could get out of this. And if those were my options, I'm going Taylor, but I'd still, be batting him eighth. Which, I mean, even if Chris Taylor's not great, it's not a bad 8-hitter to have, when looking kind of around the league and at the other options on the Dodgers roster.
Yeah. And then from an order perspective, obviously an interesting move today, which was to flip around Mookie Betts and Trey Turner. Max Muncy kind of seems cemented into that number 2 hole. And then Mookie and Trey in the 1 and 3. Justin Turner was in the 4 hole today. How would you stack the lineup? Again, ignoring righty lefty on the mound. Chris Taylor 8th.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Chris Taylor's definitely 8th. I'd probably move Seager up to 4th just because he's been, probably one of the better hitters on the team. Justin Turner, as I just said, has been struggling, so I'd probably move him down to 5th. 6th, or Will Smith 6th, Pollock 7th. As far as Trey Turner and Mookie, it's pretty interchangeable to me. I like Trey Turner at the top just because of his speed, but at the same time, if he's going to be one of the only guys producing offensively, I also kind of like him in the 3 hole. So I've got it's a better opportunity with guys on. So I'm fine either way. I'd probably keep him at the top for now and Mookie 3rd, but That's a good problem to have, I'd say. Whereas figuring out the bottom of the order right now when Pollock's out and other guys are getting rest, that's a much bigger issue for this
Yeah, it's an
team.
interesting debate where, on one hand, Trey Turner is the guy that you most want at second base with nobody out because he's going to score on any single no matter what. And on the flip side, he also happens to be the guy you trust most to drive in the guy from second base
Exactly.
simultaneously. And so
Exactly.
you've got to figure out those two. I'm with you. I probably like him more at the top of the lineup, just getting him as many at bats as possible because he's their best hitter right now. Obviously, his speed
Right.
is a game changer. And yeah, if he can get on first, steal second, and then any single from the next three batters scores a run, that's a big deal. And other than that, I think I'm with you. I think I would have Corey Seager batting fourth. I think I'd have Turner fifth. Honestly, like I might put Will Smith fifth and move Turner down to sixth. You could make an argument that Turner, though the average has looked good, the power has kind of dwindled, that even Turner, could you move
Yeah.
him down to seventh behind AJ Pollock? There's no indication that they would do that, so it's almost foolish to talk about it. But if you're just talking guys you trust, that's what's fascinating is Seager has been better, Will Smith has been better, and before getting hurt, AJ Pollock had started to
Yeah.
cool off a little bit, but interesting
Yeah.
there. And then again, Muncy is in the 2 hole. I think we mentioned it. He's getting a ton more fastballs. He's one of the best fastball hitters in all of baseball. Obviously, they like the ability to work the count. You don't want someone saying move Corey up to number 2. You don't want Corey at number 2 because if Trey Turner's on first and Seager's swinging at the first pitch, that doesn't do you any good. You want a guy that's going to take pitches, working at bat, so that Trey Turner, if he does want to steal,
Right.
he can do that. Whereas if Seager swings at the first pitch and grounds into a double play, you've wasted Trey Turner there. So there's your explanation with that. Let's go to the schedule real quick because I do think there's some interesting stuff here. So again, the Dodgers have 21 games remaining. The Giants have 22 games remaining. They're 2.5 games back. Here's the Dodgers schedule. They got a 6-game homestand with 3 against the Padres and 3 against the Diamondbacks. Urias, Buehler, and Scherzer are on the mound for the Padres series, and then unknown Monday, and then Gonsolin and Urias Tuesday and Wednesday. That unknown Monday,
Kershaw.
yeah,
Yeah.
could be Kershaw. Is what all indications would point to. Just breaking it down bit by bit. So we got 3 against the Padres, 3 against the Diamondbacks. Then you go at Cincinnati. It looks like Castillo, Gray, and Miley are the 3 pitchers that line up for the Reds there against Buehler and Scherzer. You want to talk about Buehler versus Castillo and Scherzer versus Gray? You've got some matchups there. Then you go 3 at Colorado, 3 at Arizona, 3 home for the Padres, and then 3 home for the Brewers. So the Dodgers, you like to see all the Diamondbacks games. The Rockies have been a little bit kryptonite, especially on the road, so maybe you don't love those. The Dodgers have played the Padres well. You get 6 games against the Padres, all at home. The Brewers have been good. The Reds have been good. You look at the Giants' schedule, on the other hand, and who they've got coming up. A bunch of games against the Padres as well is part of the equation. But looking at who they've got, 3 games at Chicago Cubs this weekend, a 4-game homestand against the Padres, 3 games against the Braves, 3 games at San Diego, 3 games at Colorado, 3 games home against the Diamondbacks, and 3 more against the Padres. So 10 games against the Padres in their final 22. Somebody pointed out, which is a good point, it's very unlikely that the Giants win the division and the Padres make the wild card because between those 10, if both teams go 5-5, that doesn't help anybody. So one of those 2 teams is likely going to be hurt, which I think is a great point. The Dodgers have to play the Reds. The Giants have to play the Braves. Dodgers maybe a slight advantage getting 3 extra games against the Diamondbacks. Both teams have to travel to Colorado. What do you make of those 2 schedules? I know I just threw a bunch at you, but do you see a clear advantage one way or the other?
I mean, well, the one thing that you pointed out is the Dodgers, I think you said they finish up against the
Yep.
Brewers their last 3 games. So that right there, that's going to be interesting because obviously the Brewers, their division will be clinched by
Yep.
then. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how they handle those games because it's possible those are the last 3 games of the season. It's possible the Dodgers go into that 1 game out of first place, tied for first place, whatever, like needing to win those games. So do the Brewers, rest their guys and get them ready for the postseason,
Yep.
or do they trot out their guys wanting to beat the Dodgers so the Dodgers are the wild card team and then potentially lose the wild card game and then they won't have to face the Dodgers in the postseason. So I think that'll be
the 1 seed.
very
The 1 seed
interesting
could
to
be on the
see.
line as well potentially for the
Yeah.
Brewers, who are just a few games back.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see because those are the toughest game. And like, let's say the Brewers are resting their guys there, then I think the schedule is in favor of the Dodgers as opposed to the Giants. But if that's a full strength Brewers, then I'd say it's pretty even, just because the Giants have more games against the Padres than the Dodgers. They also play the Braves, who are a good team. I'd say the Dodgers have more against the Diamondbacks, so I'd say it's slightly in the Dodgers' favor, but it could come down to that Brewers series, and we'll see, what team we get to go up
Yeah,
against.
and for the same point, the Giants close against the Padres, who are likely to be in a wild card hunt in those last three
For
games.
sure,
So the Padres could be throwing everything they have at the Giants down the stretch. So it's an
for
interesting way to
sure.
look at it. I mean, again, you never want to count division wins because it always feels like the Dodgers mess up as soon as you think they're supposed to win a game. But
Yeah,
you love
right.
6 against the Diamondbacks, home and away. You think, okay, can you take 5 out of 6 Arizona? I think anything else besides that would be disappointing. You've got the
Yeah,
Rockies, and you say, okay, it's in Colorado, yes, but the Rockies are terrible, and you need to pick that up. So maybe 2 out of 3 there. So now we're 7-2 in 9 games against the division. And then you've got 6 against the Padres. Can you win 4 out of 6? Now we're up to 11-4. And that leaves you with 3 at Cincinnati. That's probably a tough one. I've been optimistic, so maybe I'll go pessimistic now for a minute. So that's 12-6. And then you get 3 against the Brewers to close it out. And let's say they're resting guys and you can get 2 out of 3. So now you're 14-7. 14-7. In order for the Giants to give up the division in that situation, the Giants have an extra game. So let's say they win tomorrow to go up 3 games at some point. The Giants would have to go 11-10 over their last stretch, or excuse me, so 12-10. The Giants would have to go 12-10 in order for the Dodgers to tie for the divisional lead. So that I feel like I was pretty optimistic on a lot of those series, and it just goes to show you the Giants only have to play 500 baseball at this point in the season for the Dodgers to be able to just tie them, and then you go into the 1-game play-in, which would be just a disaster. I mean, the Dodgers would be set up for it because you throw Scherzer against the Giants, and if you do lose that one, then you throw Buehler against the Padres or whoever in the wild card game, and you go from there. But you can see
Yeah.
that the Dodgers, like, we're not talking about the Dodgers need to start winning a few games. We're talking about, like, you need all 6 from Arizona, you need 3 from Colorado, and you need to, like, win 80% of the games from here on out just to have a chance because, again, the Giants just swept the Rockies. This team is not slowing down.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the hole the Dodgers have dug themselves into, and it'll be interesting to see if these rest days, for the main guys continue, because you just kind of broke it down. You can't afford to be dropping games, especially when you're playing the subpar teams. Every game from here on out matters. I mean, that's been the case for a while, but they haven't been, managing it like that's the case. So it'll be interesting to see if there's kind of a flip of the switch there of like, hey, now we got to win every game from here on out. So we're going to send our best guys out there. Enough of this Billy
Yeah.
McKinney, Steven Souza, Austin Barnes junk. Like let's put our best guys out there, because now we're 2.5 games back, three in the loss column, and there's no more margin for error at this point. You just said it. The Giants basically, unless the Dodgers go on some crazy run, the Giants could play slightly better than 500 baseball and still win this division. So it'll be interesting, but it's a big series this weekend because you can't really, the Giants are playing the Cubs, so they're going to win 2 out of 3, if not a sweep there. The Cubs have nothing to play for at this point. So you have to do the same against a tough Padres team, or else you're dropping more ground and then the division's just over with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So interesting stuff there. We'll see how that all plays out for the Dodgers, how that plays out for the Giants. But it just doesn't look promising for me. Like, you just do the math on this kind of thing, and we'll see. I mean, look, the Dodgers are more than capable of winning all these games. Let me ask you one more question, Daniel. We talk about 21 games remaining. I'm going to throw out some guys, and I want you to tell me how many of these 21 games do you want these Dodger players to play. So we'll start with the most obvious up in the air guy, which would be Will Smith. 21 games. The Dodgers have at least one off day. It looks like maybe 2 off days. Yes, they've got 2 off days less this season. So 21 games in 23 days. How many of those 21 games do you need to see Will Smith in the starting lineup for the Dodgers?
It should be like 18.
Yeah.
They have 2 other off days, so that gives them 5 total out of 5 off days out of like 23 days or
Yeah.
whatever. That's basically one every 5 days. That's perfectly doable at this point. There's no reason there's no reason for him to not play that much
Yeah.
unless he's, hurt or whatever.
18 honestly sounds low to me. Like that has to be at least
Yeah.
19 or 20, I think. If you're giving me
Yeah.
2 off days, like he's young and you're in a playoff stretch. Like I need to be able to throw you out there 7 days in a row and see what we get out of you. So I'd say 19 at least. That gives you 4 off days in 23. I mean, that's 1 out of every 5 days, 1 out of every 6 days. I think we can expect. Corey Seager, 21 games in 23 days. I mean, should he sit at all?
No.
I mean, like,
If he's
right.
if he all the main guys, if they're healthy, outside of Will Smith, I gave him a couple days just
Yeah.
because he's a catcher. But all the other guys, if they're healthy, they should be playing every day at this point. It's not like it's only 21 games here. It's there's a couple off days mixed in. This is crunch time. You can't be sitting guys out at this
Yeah,
point.
and I mean Mookie Betts, like if you want to try and make an argument for, hey, Mookie Betts, the hip thing, maybe give him a day
Sure,
off.
you could get a couple,
Sure.
but like
Keep in mind who the backup outfielders are. I mean, that's the flip side.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you're like, okay, fine, Mookie takes a rest because AJ needs to get a day. And obviously AJ Pollock with the hamstring injury, if he comes back, you'd expect him to come back slowly. But the thing is like, I just can't get out of my mind. What are we resting these guys for? Like, what are we playing for? What are we playing for? It's to avoid the wild card game until that is completely mathematically impossible or incredibly unlikely.
And the thing is, if you're playing that wild card game, that's taking away a couple days of rest right there. Like if you avoid the wild card game, you get a nice little 3-4 day break after the regular season. Use that as your time to rest, and then you're rejuvenated for the postseason, as opposed to having to play the wild card game, and then after that if you win, you have to get on a plane and go to San Francisco. Probably that takes another day away pretty much. So, that should be taken into consideration as well. If you avoid the wild card game, you're going to get all the rest you need.
Yeah.
So that should be the number one priority.
I'm going to make a prediction here. I think the Dodgers are going to sweep the Padres this weekend. I'm not trying to be the optimist guy, but I just think I'm imagining what the mood is on that plane ride home today. And I'm hoping you've got leaders in that group. You've got Max Scherzer. You've got David Price, who are maybe newer to the group, but you've got Mookie Betts. You've got Justin Turner. Somebody needs to stand up and needs to say something and say, hey, we need to take accountability for what's about to happen. We got 21 games left. We're 2.5 games back. We're good enough. We're good enough to go 17-4 down the stretch. Like that's not unrealistic. And if you do that, then the Giants have to play really, really well to hold you off.
Yeah.
Urias versus Musgrove, Buehler versus Paddock, Scherzer versus Snell. I mean, maybe Urias versus Musgrove. Aside from Urias, Musgrove, Buehler much better than Paddock. Scherzer much better than Snell, as good as Snell has been against the Dodgers. Musgrove has been good. Urias, so maybe you call a push there. But 3 home games against the Padres. This needs to be 3 straight wins. If it's not 3 straight wins, I don't see how the Dodgers come back in the division. I mean, unless the Giants get swept in their series against the Cubs. If you don't sweep this, you're probably at best staying where you are, and then we're having the same conversation down 2.5 games with 18 games to go. So for me, if you don't sweep the Padres, I think the division's out of reach. For you, do you see a sweep? Urias, Musgrove, Buehler, Paddock, Scherzer, Snell? That's Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday day game. Is that 3 wins right there?
I mean, they got the pitching to do it. You feel comfortable with all 3 of those guys. But the question hasn't been the pitching for a while now. We've known that the pitching is going to show up every night, and they have. It's just a matter of, can they get going offensively? The Padres, they got some of their best guys going. I mean, Paddock is mixed in there, so that should be a nice game for the offense.
He's been nice. He's been nice the last 2 starts.
But yeah, when you look and see those 3 guys starting at this point in the season, those are all games you need to win, especially when the other games are bullpen games and such. And Kershaw will be coming back, but probably could only throw 3 or 4 innings or whatever. So when you have your best 3 guys going, you need to win those games. So yeah, I mean, a sweep would be great, but I feel like with Dodgers Padres, we just never know, because obviously the Padres treat those games like they're the World Series. They see the Dodgers and they automatically just play their best. So we know they're fighting for a wild card spot. So it should be a tightly contested series, probably a bunch of low scoring games with the pitchers that are throwing. But yeah, the Dodgers, like you said, when the Giants are going to beat the Cubs, so you got to keep pace. You can't afford to lose ground at this point.
Yeah, I mean, here's the other thing I would say. I would say a week from right now, 7 days from right now, Thursday, September 16th at about 10 p.m., I think you're going to have unbelievable clarity about how this plays out, because the Dodgers will have played 3 games against the Padres with their 3 best pitchers, followed by 3 games against the Diamondbacks and then an off day. Meanwhile, the Giants 3 in Chicago, which is not a good team, but at least it's on the road, followed, and those are all 11:20 a.m. day games. So that's not normal for a West Coast team to be playing at those hours. And then you come home for 4 games against the Padres. So 7 games for the Giants, 6 games for the Dodgers. The Dodgers need to be looking to go at least 5-1. Meanwhile, the Giants have 3 at Chicago and then come back with 4 against the Padres. I think a week from today, we have unbelievable clarity about how this plays out, because if the Dodgers are still 2 games back after that stretch with 15 games to go, I think it's going to be worrisome. Obviously, the Giants then go to play Atlanta. So maybe you extend it 3 more days and say, at that point, we're going to know. But I don't know. I mean, we're running out of time, and it's been a roller coaster. There have been moments when we sat here, and I'm like, it's over. Like, just resign yourself to the wild card. And then the Dodgers go on a run. The Giants lose 3 out of 4 to the Brewers. We're all fired up. I'm looking at the Giants series. The pitching matchups line up perfectly, and the Dodgers blow it. So I don't know. I mean, we've talked about Matt Beatty. I'd like to see Matt Beatty back. I'd like to see more Zach McKinstry. I'd like to see less Billy Mckinney. I'd like to see no Cody Bellinger. But we'll see. We'll see. A week from now. So stay tuned. Daniel and I are going to be back on Monday. We've got a DodgerHeads, so we'll be able to break down this Padres series this weekend. So make sure you check that out. As I said, if you're interested in the conversation, a more extended version of the options, the alternatives to Cody Bellinger, if you were the Dodgers, we broke down Sheldon Noisy and Zach Rex and Luke Raley and Zach McKinstry and Gavin Lux, and we went deep. Steven Souza was on there. The news broke while we were recording it that he was coming up. So lots of options there. Check that out. DodgerBlue.com with all the latest. DodgerBlue1958 on social media. Hey, we appreciate you all joining us on Thursday night, post NFL opening night. Dodgers lose a tough one today, 2-1. But again, they're on their way home. They got a big series against the Padres. Daniel and I both looking forward to this and saying, hey, we need three wins with the pitching matchups we got. So
let's do it.
That's Daniel Starkand. My name's Jeff Spiegel. We appreciate you joining us. DJ Jesse, Derek, THP, Mr. Cat, Nomo Fomo, Ty Zero, Boomer Assassin, Pretty Gal, all of you folks, we appreciate you joining us. We'll see you Monday.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.